Alright, I'm a big Twilight Princess fan, so this is a video that I was interested in. Twilight Princess, the game Nintendo never wanted to make. Let's check it out.
If you ask any pizza delivery guy still wearing his stained-up Triforce shirt what he thinks of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and you'll get a wide variety of responses ranging from they love it, they hate it, they forgot about it, or get off to it. And 15 years later, people still don't really know where it stacks up in the franchise. You've got keyboard jousters online saying it's the apex of the series, and you've got others saying it has less identity and character than the game about wearing masks. Regardless of what side of the argument you're on, there's one thing that they both agree on, and that's the game was seen as a more corrective measure from the cartoonish style of the Wind Waker. And when you're a kid, you're SpongeBob, and when you're an adult, you're Squidward. This is nothing that we haven't heard before. But that whole story is just the tip of a much larger iceberg that almost sank the entire franchise itself. Ask developers about this game, and you will get a very different opinion. You see, Twilight Princess is one of the weirdest games in the entire series, because it was the only one that was a test tube baby, incubated out of sheer desperation in this Hail Mary last-ditch attempt to save the franchise from winding up in the same time corner as the Metroid series. This wasn't just a simple correction from the Wind Waker. This is the developers deliberately sacrificing every single core value they've had in the franchise for decades in an attempt to somehow reclaim a bit of the magic and charm and sales of Ocarina of Time. And thank God they did, because without Twilight Princess, there is no Breath of the Wild. But before we break down the game
Really? I mean, maybe, yeah, probably.
itself, you're probably wondering how we even got into this spot in the first place. And that takes us all the way back to the year 2000. The year is 2001, a time period where wearing a long sleeve shirt under a short
Did it really come out in 2001? No.
sleeve one meant that you liked listening to music. And as per usual, Nintendo is getting absolutely fisted by their competition. The console wars are in the middle of an arms race, and it looks like Nintendo's been kind of skipping the gym, while Sony's PS2 continues to claim every single squat rack and bench press in the place.
PS2 was pretty big.
Number one most selling console in the history of goddamn video games.
Okay, it was
Crazy
huge,
to think
never
that
mind.
it's not even in its final form yet. And if that's not bad enough, there's this guy named Bill Gates, and he's coming up with this Ben 10 ass looking thing called the Xbox, while Nintendo has nothing to show for it. And in their absence, rumors start to spread around the company. I heard Nintendo's turning into a game company for kids. I heard that their next console isn't even gonna be as powerful as the other ones. I hear that they've been grooming children.
Whoa.
Oh, I thought we were talking about YouTubers. You want the... So to combat this, they render out a bunch of gameplay hardware demos that show what the console is capable of. One of those demos was a realistic fight between Link and Ganon, and people like it.
For the new
People
console?
really like it. Up until the point one of the directors of the Zelda franchise, E.J. Aonuma,
That looks
goes
so...
up to the press and interviews
I mean, for the
and
times, it probably looked amazing.
what the console is capable of. One of those demos was a realistic fight between Link and Ganon, and people like it. People really
He just
like
threw
it. Up
aside
until
the
point
shield.
One of the
That's kinda
directors of
funny.
the Zelda franchise, E.J. Aonuma, goes up to the press and interviewers and directly says to them, "I fucking hate it. I hate this shit with a goddamn passion." Awesome,
no.
exactly the type of press that Nintendo needs right now. So without even half of their launch titles even finished, Nintendo realizes it needs to launch their next console to combat all these rumors that they're a franchise for kids, and they officially release their response to Sony. A blurble launch box that takes game discs the size of peach rings, with the only notable titles on launch being Super Monkey Ball and Luigi's Mansion.
Oh, Luigi Mansion is great.
Oh my god, why isn't it selling? Sadly, this thing launched worse than Pretty Patties, and unlike those, wouldn't see its cult-like following until years after its relevance.
Yeah, I think I heard about that. The GameCube didn't actually sell that well, even though it is kind of a cult classic now. It was kind of a... Yeah, compared to what Sony and Microsoft were doing, it was kind of a failure.
Hey, is that one purple?
Nintendo's finances and stock prices aside, this thing was awesome. This console would go on to be cherished by everyone who owns it, and confuse the fuck out of everyone who didn't. If you're someone that just bought a brand new PS2 playing games like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, Metal Gear Solid, Grand Theft Auto, Devil May Cry, fucking Silent Hill 2, you're watching the release of the GameCube like it's XQC trying to finish a complete sentence.
Okay.
Why would it
Slow it down, Slipper.
Nintendo's in a bit of hot water at the moment as they
Okay.
failed to capture the more mature audiences of the West, but what turns the whole thing into a boil is this little ditty they're making called The Wind Waker. And remember that gameplay tech demo that everyone liked? Well, EJ actually elaborated more, saying it wasn't what he wanted it to be and wasn't what he wanted to make. The thing is, Wind Waker was originally slated to be a realistic Zelda, so EJ went behind the backs of his higher-ups and developed something that fit his style a bit more.
Oh, interesting.
Hi there, Mr. Aonoma?
Hi.
Hi, we just...
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Hello. We just got your first draft of Toon Link, and it looks very nice. It's a little different than we were expecting. Yes, we will do many new gameplay mechanics with the Tuna Rink. Thought we were going for a more realistic vibe to capture that mature audience. No, we will do an OSHA with many new gameplay. This wouldn't happen to be related to the whole tentacles thing? No. So they released The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and it is a straight-up masterpiece. As a white guy making video game essays, dare I say it is a triumph.
I think a lot of people said at the time it was probably the best Zelda game, right?
Or the other Luke Stefan-esque looking thumbnails. God, I hate that. But to Nintendo, it didn't hit anywhere near their sales metrics, and a lot of fans at the time mistook it for a more watered-down version of the series, leaving mature fans thinking it was made for kids, and kids thinking it was also made for kids. Around this timeline, it sold about 2 to 3 million copies, which is on par with Metroid Prime 1 at the time. And while the sales weren't even that bad, Nintendo's response to it definitely was. To understand their perspective, we have to understand 3 of their core values first. First of all, the Zelda franchise does not sell well in Japan. Like at all.
Really?
Despite being made by a Japanese team. Right. So when a game flops overseas, everyone...
I mean, that kind of makes sense. There's a lot of Japanese shit that does well overseas that isn't that hot in Japan.
But you just start scratching their head as to why. They know that the graphics aren't a huge hit in the West, but to them, they still think it's pretty viable. They are not in touch with that market at all. Despite this whole thing being able to be cleared up with a couple phone calls, they think it's because of something much bigger called gamer drift. No, not the things that the Joy-Cons do. This is a term that Nintendo made where they gaslight themselves into thinking that if a game doesn't sell well, it's only because people are not interested in the core mechanics of a game. So instead of looking at the data to understand why certain games don't perform in certain markets, they just throw the whole thing out and say, we gotta start from scratch. 2, the company has zero interest in simply making just bigger and better sequels. If it doesn't have a radical gameplay change, to them it's not worth the time at all. And 3, head honcho Miyamoto is convinced that it should take no longer than 6 months to make a legendary game. Which makes sense when you're
6 months?
Making games for consoles that have the same amount of polygons that are in a bag of Doritos. But now with newer consoles, it takes way more time and more resources to make a fully fledged game that people are expecting from a company. So guess what their solution is? They took the Tingle Tuner, which was a mechanic from the Wind Waker that required a Game Boy Advance to be hooked up to a GameCube. It was a mechanic that no one used from the game that no one bought, and figured that's what they're going to use to jumpstart the franchise. Confident that this new gameplay mechanic is going to get everyone back into the series, they released Four Swords Adventures, also known as the worst-selling Zelda game of all time. Splish. The game sold about 800,000 units, about half as
That's it, really?
much as Metroid Prime 2. And if you're a stockholder at Nintendo, you're probably thinking, all right guys, a bit of a rough day today, but why don't we grab some lunch? Who's filling up for seppuku? As far as Nintendo's concerned, people are just tired of Zelda. From their perspective, every attempt they've had at innovation isn't working in the markets, and if they're gaslit on this idea of gamer drift, the OG formula of the game isn't what people want. Again, this is according to them. At this point, director Eiji Aonuma is thinking of stepping down, tired of Miyamoto's conflicting visions of Zelda, as he only cares about the new shit they're making on the DS, with the controlling Link with a stylus, as to them that's uncharted room to fuck around with. But even they feel like the controls are cramped and unintuitive, and to them, since they've been scarred by Four Swords Adventures, they think this game might even flop as well. At this point, the only thing keeping the franchise on life support is the Game Boy game, selling just as on par with Metroid. In fact, the entire Zelda series is following the almost identical sales trajectory, and we all know how that one turned out.
Yeah, they haven't done much with Zelda or with Metroid since the new. I mean, until the new game came out. Yeah.
Does the unthinkable. This absolute legend sees the writing on the wall, takes a knee, swallows his pride, and suggests the following to Miyamoto. Shigeru, I know I hated that Space World demo, but what if we just make a realistic Zelda game?
Hell yeah, dude.
Fuck no.
A dark
Look, I know,
too.
But we're losing primarily older teens, and our data shows if we do this right, it might just work.
Hell no.
What part of fuck no was I not clear on? Okay, fine, look, I'll allow it, but it has to be 120% Zelda. This is a direct quote from me.
What the hell?
What does that mean? I don't know. Figure it out. I'll be back later to shit on it and tell you to change half of it. Okay, bye. The entire office was shocked to hear him say it, and they all thought it was a bad move. Since Miyamoto himself wasn't super involved, he capitulated under the strict condition that it do everything that Ocarina of Time couldn't do. The issue being, the only thing they could think of was just being able to swing your sword on horseback. So with no actual direction to take the game, they decided to dust off Ocarina of Time as their blueprint. However, E3 is right around the corner, and with basically no actual gameplay to show for it, they render out a fake sequence that mirrors what they originally teased in Ocarina of Time's release. With the entire goal here of being able to see if the audience is even interested in a sequel to Ocarina. So at the very end of their presentation, they announced they have just one final game for the GameCube to tease.
People are already getting
The
up and
lights
leaving.
dim, the orchestra swells, and there's a murmur that begins to echo throughout the crowd as they try to
Are they
figure out
going to
what
sit
the they're
down?
looking at. It looks kind of realistic and dystopian, and all of a sudden it clicks, and everyone in the audience realizes that they are watching a realistic Link riding a fucking horse, and people just lose their fucking shit.
That was a very dramatic trailer. Okay,
People are
dude.
universally stoked on this one, and this reaction is the only thing developers have to go off of, because behind the scenes, they don't know what on earth to do with this thing. They're anguishing over its creation, knowing that it has to measure up to this original title, while at the same time being just a fan service game trying to make
God,
lightning
this
strike
music,
the same
dude.
place twice.
Oh, I'm getting
when
PTSD.
they released this to the audience, they didn't even have a name for it yet. That's how little they have in development, and delay after delay ensues, as they realize they only have two options to really pursue here. First is to heavily focus on the horseback combat, which is a great addition to the game that gets boring after about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And second is to focus on this alternate dimension called the Twilight Realm, in which Link would turn into an animal like he did in some other Zelda game that I have never played. They settle on a wolf before Miyamoto scolds EJ, saying you can't control a creature with 4 legs, as you can barely control the one that only has 2, as development was so troubled at this point. But they realize they're so far behind that they're getting close to the launch of the Wii, when Miyamoto Man shows up and says, oh yeah, and you also have to make it run on the Wii. And it has to use motion controls.
no.
I don't know, figure it out. They try everything to shoehorn the motion controls in, and
I
almost
forgot
chose
that
to
it
make the
was
player
released on
control
the Wii.
Link's movement with you pointing the Wii remote.
That's so
That's how close
weird.
they came to fucking this up. They finally settle on the player just controlling the bow with a Wii remote, and Miyamoto's happy and they're done fucking around with it. So it's finally
Okay.
time for them to release the game 3 years after they announced it was coming soon, and it's finally about to
3
hit
years,
shelves. But not for long, because that shit flew off of them. The Zelda Blue Balls is finally over and everyone buys it the fuck up, with every 4 Wiis selling 3 copies of Twilight Princess on its release, adding up to
Wow.
almost 9 million total sales.
Wow.
But despite all of the critically acclaimed reviews, positive user scores, people
Yeah.
start to realize that this game is very different from what they were expecting, and a division starts to grow within the audience. And speaking of division, I'd like to introduce the sponsor of this video, Brilliant, for paying my bills this month in exchange for me showing one of my favorite services available on this platform. See, I don't know about you, but I personally will never forgive the education system for gaslighting me into thinking that learning is boring. And that is the exact misconception that Brilliant is correcting through offering thousands of interactive, hands-on courses for you to experience without any of those pesky hands-on teachers. When I first got the email from
what?
Brilliant, I was pretty excited. I've seen their product advertised on other YouTube videos and always thought it was a pretty cool service. So I first emailed them back to saying, hey, can I get a premium subscription to try it out? And they said, sure, have fun, knock yourself out. When I went to record footage for the ad read, I wound up with several hours of me just learning about logic and critical thinking skills that directly translate to me making better videos for you guys. Their approach to learning by having you physically solve fun interactive puzzles while giving you feedback through every step of the way perfectly caters to my learning style of around with it and see what happens. And with Brilliant, you can learn any of these courses through that same approach, whether it's beginner content or all the way up to college advanced skills. You can literally sign up for free and just start experimenting. Hell, some of my favorite content creators like Veritasium and Courage something sponsor Brilliant and even have courses of their own on the website. I could not be more proud to have such a positive sponsor on a video, and I really appreciate them taking a risk on my gaming channel where I talk about video games and eating boogers. So go show them some love and sign up for free at brilliant.org/manley-reviews or click the link in the description. Also, the first 200 of you get 20% off their annual subscription. So go prestige your worth as a human being and go sign up. Thanks for Brilliant for sponsoring the episode. So going back to Twilight Princess, people boot that shit up for the first time and they see the franchise in a whole new coat of paint. And they're about to get into something really special.
The graphics actually look really good. Wait, when did this game come
I
out?
want to make this very clear. The game
2004?
is still
5?
fantastic. It is a great game with all
really
that
good.
Nintendo magic. But it's clear they struggled in many regards, and people are starting to notice that this is not a game that is the sequel to Ocarina of Time. This is straight up Ocarina of Time 2. On heroin.
Is it?
This place fucking blows. Alright, we gotta talk about these visuals real quick. See, most people looked at Ocarina of Time and thought, this is what a realistic Zelda looks like. Makes sense. But just because you're looking at a world that has blue skies, green grass, and noses that would scare Kanye West, it doesn't mean you have a realistic world. You have the bare minimum to visually digest what you're looking at. See, back then devs were far less concerned about adding visual flares since they first had to make sure objects were visually identifiable. And even that's no guarantee. I don't know if this is the Stone of Agony or a fucking rumble pack. Why am I even talking about this? Because with constrained graphics, it allows more whimsical, out-of-place characters and details to look far more natural in their setting. If you've seen those realistic renders of the Ocarina of Time enemies, they're pure nightmare fuel, but make them low poly and they look right at home. So take some of the more whimsical characters that have always played an aesthetic role in the games and
right.
Get it out.
Oh God.
Get that out of here, please. Is that a chicken with nipples? And maybe I'm starting to think that this whole idea of having a realistic Zelda isn't what plays best to the Zelda.
Oh yeah. It's like those drawings of like, or the art that people do of like realistic SpongeBob or realistic Family Guy, Simpsons, shit like that, and it looks like it's straight out of a nightmare. I get the point he's making here. Yeah.
And ever since then, they've never done a realistic style since. I even found a YouTube video where they found a glitch that turned off the shell shading in Breath of the Wild, and the whole thing just looks so uncanny without the filter. But what truly shows the struggle the developers had with these graphics was it just didn't really look that great compared to more realistic games at the time. Even Metroid Prime, which ran at double the frame rate, had far more realistic visuals, and that game took like a quarter of the time to make, which I don't think comes at any major flaw of the devs. It's just one of those things that's just hard to make it work. But that's the least of its worries right now. Between the small things like Link looking absolutely zooted 24/7,
exquisite, quite flavorful. Exquisite, exquisite, exquisite.
To the overarching atmosphere of the Twilight Realm, it's time to double down on the Prozac because throw in the writing here, and we're in for quite the bummer of a ride. Because now we have to address the story. The game opens up on a quaint little village as the sun begins to set into the evening twilight, as we're greeted with Link, or whatever name you chose to give him to enhance your immersion. And save. This time around, he's living as a farmer. We live several days in the life, meeting residents, herding goats in traditional mandatory
I remember the
fashion,
herding the
we run
goats.
errands for the children of the village, who all have 3 different versions of fetal alcohol syndrome. We greet our steed as our quasi-girlfriend Ilya gives her a bath, but not before, Tallow. Tallow runs off into the forest, chasing a monkey like an absolute Chad. Finally, the game picks up as Russell instructs Link to carry this sword and deliver it to Hyrule. But before he sets out, monsters barge in, knocking him and everyone else around him unconscious. Upon waking up, he gives chase to the monsters before winding up against a big-ass black wall, which reaches out to grab him and pulls him into the Twilight Realm. And this is where the game's first big reveal. Not only is there a Twilight Realm, but Link transforms into a fucking wolf with blue earrings. Ugh, it's not a phase, Mom! I told you, I'm a wolf! This is the coolest, most edgy, hot topic-ass version of Link we will ever see. Turns out you can't be a human in the Twilight Realm unless you have a work visa from the goddess in the form of the Triforce on the back of your hand. But shocked by the transformation, Link is concussed for a second time as monsters drag him into the depths of the Hyrule prison, locking him up presumably for having half a gram of that Zaza on him, which checks out giving his earlier reactions. Locked in a forgotten prison, tethered by shackles, all hope seems lost until we meet our newest
Are we going through the whole story right now? Because it's a pretty long story.
In Midna. Yeah, the internet's gonna love you. She's a disinterested imp from the Twilight Realm, who offers
Rule
to free you
34.
on the condition that you help her retrieve the missing pieces to her helmet. And after spending a bit of time with her, it's clear that she is absolutely the main character of this game instead of Link, which I am totally fine with. She is easily the second best character in this whole franchise. The first being Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Freed from her shackles, we begin to explore around the area as this 9 Inch Nails Trent Reznor-ass soundtrack plays in the background, perfectly nailing this depressive environment where everyone took 40 Benadryls. The soundtrack in this game
It is kind of Silent Hill-esque.
did not miss. It's easily the best part of this whole experience. They even nailed the sound effects for these weird
Oh, those things.
for
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know where you start with that.
Hey man, look, we're running out of time. Do you have any sound effects for those monsters? Oh yeah. Yeah, I told you this guy was good.
Midway through our great escape, Midna explains there's someone that we need to visit before our departure from the castle, as we're greeted with none other than Zelda. Where they talk back and forth as if they already know each other, and Midna explains that she's been actually looking for us this entire time.
Oh, she said
Twilight. She
Zelda
said
then
it.
explains to us exactly what went down in this hard as fuck album cover looking in.
Dude, I thought the villain, the part 1.5 villain was this guy was so cool.
By the game's main villain,
When I played
not
him,
Ganon, but this
when I played this game back in the day.
masked fucker named Zant, leader of the
Yeah,
Twilight
I
Realm,
thought he
a
was
forbidden
cool.
world created to banish this tribe of people who created a powerful dark magic that needed to be sealed away. Although word is they just had a lot of dirt in the cleanse. But Zant's back and is still pissed about the whole banishing thing, so he's bringing the Twilight Realm back to Hyrule as he gives Zelda an ultimatum.
Yeah, Zance was cool until he took off the masks. Then it was just like, okay, dude, what is this?
It's time for you to choose. Surrender or die.
I choose both.
Base.
She surrenders to Zant, who shrouds the land in Twilight, and since we're stuck in wolf form, we're instructed to restore the light to each of the areas, while also helping Minna receive 3 pieces of fused shadow to superglue in her helmet that'll give her the ability to defeat Zant. So far, the story's gone pretty well. We've got this interesting Twilight realm, Minna seems to be tight as fuck, we got a creepy-ass villain this time around, and honestly, we're looking at probably one of the best stories in the whole series.
Oh, mama.
It'd be a shame if they cover it in plot holes in the second half, but we'll get to that. We first gotta cover a few points on the game. The biggest addition to the whole game is, of course, the wolf gameplay, which controls surprisingly well, allowing you to dig up items, smell, attack,
Yeah, I enjoyed playing
attack
as the
slightly
wolf.
differently.
Oh, that was
about
good.
it.
Yeah, the
Unfortunately,
AoE
everything's
attacks.
unlocked from the get-go, so I guess you can't really teach an old dog new tricks, making it feel like an afterthought instead of a fully fleshed out gameplay mechanic. Especially given the fact that a couple games prior, you could turn into a whole goddamn zoo. It seems like a bit of a downgrade, as the majority of the time you spend in beast mode revolves around you collecting tiers of light to change the light bulbs in each area covered in Twilight. But again, since you never unlock anything new, it just turns super repetitive. Fortunately, when in human form, the movement still feels great, and the new UI streamlines the whole experience from Ocarina of Time. It really does feel like an upgrade in the franchise. You even get a bow that has attachments like bombs and a scope equipped to it, in a UI that's more intuitive than Modern Warfare 2's Gunsmith. One of the biggest features of the whole game is the sheer size of the new Hyrule Field.
Oh, Hyrule Field. Yeah, that shit was massive, dude.
Which I will say is very impressive given how much verticality they introduced into the topography. And to make it work, it pulls the old trick of slicing it into 4 different regions to keep the console from gassing out loading it all in. The whole thing's cool in theory, but kind of blows in practice. In Ocarina, the field was a vital hub that had to be crossed, but in Twilight, you can just warp around anywhere from the get-go. Now that it's over 4 times the size, the whole thing just feels kind of empty. You can't take 5 steps.
It does look a little empty, yeah, looking back at it.
Now that it's over
Yeah, look at that.
4
Jesus.
times.
Yeah.
The size, the whole thing just feels kind of empty. You can't take 5 steps anywhere in this field without getting harassed by a bunch of annoying ass enemies, making it hard to enjoy the scenery, and there's not a whole lot to explore except for finding rupees. And boy, does this game throw a lot of fucking rupees at you.
Dude, man, I wish Tears of the Kingdom now. I wish Tears of the Kingdom threw that many rupees at me.
Which would be sick if the game actually gave you shit to spend it on. Sure, you can buy all the consumables you could ever hold, but any puzzle that requires them is going to find a way to hide them in that same area, so you never really need to purchase them in the first place.
Yeah.
Which gives you a little reason to go explore the land, because the only thing you're going to find are rupees, heart pieces, and bugs, which are just going to get you more rupees. Which isn't to say there aren't cool parts, but it does feel like they kind of rushed through it just to check a box to say that, oh, our Hyrule's like 16 times the graphics or size, whatever. But in order for us to get a better perspective on the gameplay, we first have to go revisit the story. With the forest area restored, we set off to the second region of Twilight. As it turns out, the children from the first village were kidnapped, only to be found safely cared for in the fire region, which makes me question this side plot's entire inclusion into the game, at least until one of them sustains what has to be his 3rd concussion by now as we follow pursuit on horseback. Which I will say is probably the second best part of this game. You finally get a piece of that horseback combat.
Okay, I remember fighting him on the bridge. I don't remember the kid being tied up onto a pole while you're fighting the orc leader. Jesus, dude.
And it's pretty awesome. When it works. If it works.
Please turn. Please. Oh, for the love of...
In the big finale, we rescue Colin and the rest of the kids as we save the day, and this whole side plot proceeds to wrap itself up as we grab that last piece of fused shadow and split off to the last area of Twilight. As we enter the city, we're greeted with a bustling town and one of the most impressive towns in Zelda history, as all these souls are walking around going about their daily business, as if there isn't permanent Twilight realm imposed on them, which, now that I think about it, doesn't seem like that much of a...
I don't think they notice.
Life-threatening thing. Seems like everyone's just honky-dory. We clap on the lights, and then that's the last of the Twilight realm. World saved so far. But this time, the light spirit in the area heeds a warning of the dark magic that we're in pursuit of, mentioning it was used by an ancient tribe that turned corrupt, allegedly the same people who made the Majora's Mask.
Oh, they're the ones that made that game. That was a good one.
We're then treated to one of the most bizarre cutscenes in Zelda history, where it's trying to, again, be like Hot Topic, super edgy and dark. Even though Link just probably smoked something laced, I don't know.
Anyways, I kind of remember that.
I kind of remember that. So we now have to make our way back to the city. And again, Nintendo knocked it out of the park here. This area actually feels like a city with its own unique shops. It's got minstrels. You've got the taverns. You've got this mentally insane kid who owns a castle and is autistic about bugs.
What the fuck does that mean?
You've got this fortune teller who sucks at reading your fortune because her crystal ball will only recommend her podcast clips from Andrew Tate. You've even got mini games to play, and my personal favorite thing is you've got the overpriced ritzy shop, which sells the same items you get everywhere else, but at an insane markup.
That's funny.
And how will you be paying? Motherfucker, I'm paying the ski mask away. Now hand it over. But as we return to the castle town, it
I
turns out there
don't
was
remember
someone
that.
missing
That's
from that
funny.
original village, and that was Ilya, the horse girlfriend of ours, who now seems to be suffering from some form of amnesia. And while I praise the game for at least trying to add some more of a dynamic between the characters, it just ends up having a minimal impact on the player, as we don't really know any of these characters, as all these plot points just seem to wrap themselves up with minimal input from the player, making it just feel like padding at this point. Hey Ilya, it's me, Link. Who? Oh, I'm the farmer boy from the village with cares. At this point, all the kids are safe with the shaman in the village, so this whole plot point just sort of wraps itself up. But for now, we have to get that last piece of fused shadow from the water temple, and let's give a big old round for Nintendo for actually making a water temple that doesn't suck. I know that must have taken a lot of restraint. In my opinion, this is one of the best dungeons in the game because it makes you think critically.
Oh god, I still hated this dungeon, man. Every water dungeon sucks, man. Like, I don't remember this one being better than the others.
How you're going to control the flow of water to influence the different levels in the temple, while still being streamlined and intuitive in its own way. Make a joke about Link peeing in the pool. Okay, thanks 5 a.m. Liam. We grab the final fused shadow and our contract with Minna ends, as she's got what she needs to put Zant to rest. We warp back out of the lake and, oh shit, spawn flip!
Oh.
The light spirit tries to stop it, but Zant just shuts the whole thing down,
Damn.
casting it aside along with the fused shadow held by Minna. Zant
good
mentions
chat,
that his
Zant.
power has evolved into something much greater, before cursing Link
By
into
my
perma
God.
wolf form and giving Minna a 3rd-degree sunburn as she's injured by the light realm. If you haven't noticed already, just like in Majora's Mask, Ganon isn't even here. And hell yeah, this Zant fucker is the best villain I have so far
He's
seen in
cool,
this
man.
franchise. Besides, of course, the moon. The cold composure, the ambiguous face, the Joe Biden stance he takes with Minna, even the spit in his mouth. Like, this guy is scary. It would have
Is
even
that
been even
spit?
more
Yeah, I
scary if
guess.
this wasn't ripping off the exact script of Ocarina of Time, where you collect the 3 MacGuffins from the forest, fire, and water, only to get thwarted immediately after. In fact, the side plot with the village kids is the only thing standing between this game, Ocarina of Time, and a giant lawsuit by Nintendo for copyright infringement.
Nintendo sues itself. Oh my god, that'd be classic, dude.
Either way, Minna's on her last breath, and the only one that can save her is Zelda, as the greatest song of the whole game takes over the score while we try to rescue
Ooh,
her,
this is
scaring
good.
all the denizens of Castletown. The difference being, we can't rely on any of our friends in this area since they'll attack us on sight in wolf form. So with the help of the Tavern's cat,
right,
we're guided
right, I
back
remember
into
this.
the original prison we first started out in. This may feel average to you, but if you played this back in the day, not a single person paused the game during this whole experience. It was that gripping. Also, if you ever want to impress a bunch of Guitar Center employees, start whipping out Minna's Lament in the store and you'll
Minna's
summon every wall and
Lament.
chain within a 5
Yes.
meter radius, myself included. We both wind up at Zelda's, who says the only thing that can fix Link is the Master Sword, and the only thing that'll fix Minna is Zelda straight up dying to sacrifice her spirit to Minna. And holy hell, the game
Really?
has some balls to just kill off Zelda.
I don't remember
This
that.
act of kindness shows Minna that maybe the Light World is saving after being Twilight pilled all this time. We travel through the Lost Woods, because of course we have to, because that was also in Ocarina of Time, to get the Master Sword which saves Link. And now we have to travel to the Mirror of Twilight to hopefully put Zan away for good. However, according to this guy, it's held within this super dangerous prison.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
hell no, you can already tell this guy's about to start whipping out FBI crime statistics. So it turns out Zant somehow made it here by using the Mirror of Twilight. Which is how we're gonna send him back, except oops, that's 7 years of bad luck, and the sages appear to explain what happens. Okay, this is where I swear the writers just straight up ran out of time. Apparently there was this guy named Ganon causing mischief throughout all the lands of Hyrule, and he was referred to as a demon thief.
Okay.
Whatever the fuck that is. So the sages see this guy's causing a bunch of trouble, they lock him up, but apparently, due to a divine prank by the goddess, yes, that is
A divine prank.
actually what they
blessed
say.
with the power of the gods. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird wording, I guess, divine prank, but yeah, I mean, Ganondorf has been wielding one of the Triforce powers, like pretty much in every.
Ganon is granted the
Game he's
power of
in.
the Triforce and begins to break free from the chains. They wait until he kills one of them before just sending him to the Netherrealm, where he links up with Zant. Why can't we just have Zant as the villain? Maybe I'm stupid, but I see no reason why we can't just have Zant be the bad guy of this whole game.
Yeah,
At all.
honestly.
He's the only one that actually has a valid reason for bringing the Twilight Realm into the Hyrule Realm. I don't know why Ganon has any involvement with this at all. Like the whole demon thief thing, like, they just pulled that out of their ass because they needed to have Ganon in the.
I agree. I mean, Ganondorf is like fine. He's a fine addition, but I think I would have also preferred it if it was just Zant. I thought Zant was a perfect villain for the Twilight Princess game. And then they just kind of pull Ganondorf out of nowhere to
Ocarina of
at the end
Time
of the
remake game. Like, again, maybe I'm just missing something, but this seems like a decision by the company. But it turns out Zant isn't the true ruler of Twilight, meaning he can't actually break the mirror but only divide it into 4 convenient pieces that all find their way into 4 different temples, and you can guess where we have to go from here. The main part of the story just goes on pause here until we complete all 4 mirror shards, which by now leads us right back into the game. With the first 3 dungeons donezo, you're looking at a pretty stacked loadout here. You've got all the tunics, every type of bomb, the claw shot, the wolf mold on a toggle switch. You've got the fully kitted out bow and arrow along with its free demo version, the slingshot. Not sure why that's still here. But the world's now fully open for us to explore to our heart piece's content, leaving us with one of the biggest issues of this entire game. If you've ever enjoyed a Zelda game, a large chunk of the fun comes from getting lost in the wide variety of obtuse side quests that make you want to double check each hole in liminal space the series has to offer. But the only large side quests in the game just require bullshit hunting. Sure, you can get this schizo girl all the bugs she wants and she'll give you a bigger wallet and enough rupees to crash the Hylian economy, or you can help turn the Goldfinger guy turn human
that guy,
by collecting a bunch of Poe souls, in which he just gives you a bunch of rupees to get. But now they're worthless because you already crashed the Hylian crypto market. At least with that side quest, you got to interact with the town's cat gang, which is like, hey, why not make that a whole big side quest? I don't know, do a whole thing where you talk to a bunch of animals. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Zelda side quests have never really been that great in my opinion. I've always, I mean, I don't play the Zelda games for the side quests, obviously, but I don't know. I've never really been impressed by any of them.
Again, you may think I'm blaming the developers here, but this is probably just because
compared
they were
to
up
other
against
games,
such tight constraints in making this game, seeing how they were 3 years late in the whole project. The only side quest here that gets you something unique requires you sharing some gamer girl bathwater with this guy and donating a fuck ton of rupees into this charity. Ugh, charity. Gross. Which not only unlocks this funky tune, but also gives you the funky tunic that makes you invincible while draining your rupees as you wear it. A feature that would have been cool if you had a wallet that could actually make the thing work for longer than 2 minutes. And the game's not hard at all, so the actual utility of it is pretty much useless. Which also brings us to major issue of the game, number 2, which would be the difficulty, because a majority of the combat
god, what is going on in that video?
Just looks like this. You can learn hidden skills in the game that make combat a little more spicy, but you never need to use them because, again, you can just do. But you don't always play Zelda for the combat, you play it for the puzzles, at least in theory, because the game isn't that hard. A damn shame too, because the dungeons in the second act of the game are some of the most creative in the whole series, but they never really evolve past the linear experience.
I remember that one. The snow house. Or like the mansion in the mountains. Yeah, that was cool. Shit, dude, this is bringing back memories. Holy fuck.
To get one key, unlock one door. Just compare any of these dungeons to like the
god damn, dude, I really want to play this game now.
Forest Temple from
play it
Ocarina
again.
of Time. What direction do you go? I don't know. You've got this room that's twisting reality. You've got this weird sewer thing that goes somewhere. And eventually you'll reach a door that needs a key. And then where's the key? Oh my god, it's actually outside of the fucking dungeon. Like, what the hell? I think the best example of this, though, is despite having this entire warped shadow realm, it's never used for any major puzzle solving. Even Metroid Prime 2 had objects in this weird state of flux between 2 realities where manipulating one would change the one and the other. And whenever Twilight does experiment with some new gameplay stuff, like the fidget spinner or the ball and chain or the staff, I don't remember the name. They all expand on them pretty well, but take one step outside of a dungeon and all that shit goes right back into that Metroid corner because it's never being seen again. You may be thinking I'm saying the game's bad, but it's still fantastic. It's just that it missed out on a lot of great opportunities, and it definitely didn't age very well. If you look at the remasters for the Zelda series, Twilight Princess barely broke 1 million, 3 times less than all the other remakes.
Twilight Princess
Masters
HD
for the
Wii U.
Zelda
Okay,
series.
well, that was like for the Wii U. That didn't come out that much.
Twilight Princess barely broke 1 million.
2000. Okay. That is a while. 10 years. Never mind. But no, I mean, not many people had a Wii U, so maybe the Wii U is partially to blame for that. I don't know.
3 times less than all the other remakes in the series.
Wind Waker.
But despite all of its great inclusions and charm, the game still gives you this aftertaste of driving on a familiar road covered in fog at night. It's all Zelda, but there's just something so clunky about it trying so hard to exist solely as one giant Family Guy reference to Ocarina of Time.
I like Twilight Princess, but it's just not the same.
But speaking of dungeons, after speedrunning all of them, we finally get all the pieces to the Mirror of Twilight. We now take the fight directly to Zant, where we approach the... wise man said to change the world, you have to first change yourself. So we all start to attack the man in the mirror, as this is where we enter the Twilight Realm for the last time, to confront Zant head on. But as we meet him, he proceeds to have a complete Twitter moment and begins trauma dumping on all of us and how he was supposed to be the ruler of the Twilight Realm, but apparently—
Yeah, like this part. Like, he was so cool up until this part, and when he starts throwing a little hissy fit.
magic powers bestowed upon said ruler fell on Midna instead of him. So he cursed her into imp form, and it turns out he's been dick riding Ganon this whole time as he dances around throwing out any tension building up to this moment before beating him and moving on to the real threat of the game. Cucked out of the game's original villain, we now need to fight Ganon, with the only explanation for his involvement in this whole thing being that he wanted to merge the light and the dark to, I don't know, make gray. This is not a motive! Unless you work at a paint store, this is a bullshit goal. And you know they're doing it just so they can shoehorn Ganon to make more Zelda references.
Honestly, dude, like they did it, oh god, it feels like they really forced Ganon into this game. They just kind of had to come up with an idea, like, why is Ganondorf in this game? I don't know. He's just he's always in the Zelda games.
This is in their Zelda game. And what's even worse is that whole somber moment between Midna and Zelda, I guess, just didn't happen, because she's here on screen now. You can't just have a character dissolve on this screen with zero explanation. Alright, fair point. Maybe I'm reading into this too much. Regardless, we still have a kick-ass fight with Ganon and one of the best boss battles in the entire game, as we finally get to witness a better version of that duel that was promised to us all those years back in Space World 2000. We win the fight and everything goes back to normal, except now Midna's no longer cursed in midget form and can turn back into Twilight form. And holy shit.
Mama, I don't remember that. God damn.
She's a girl? Oh no, we can't just end on a happy note. She says farewell to Link and on her way out shatters the mirror of Twilight beyond repair.
I don't remember that. How did
one
I
of
not
the
remember
saddest
that?
moments in Zelda history.
Jeez Louise, dude.
Right after hearing Zelda voice acted in a British accent.
And tell that to my father, please.
Oh, she sounds so annoying in this game, man.
Isn't she beautiful?
And that's Twilight
Just
Princess.
a bit of
Hopefully these
answer.
Twilight people show up in Breath of the Wild too. Wouldn't that be cool? If you want to support the channel, hopefully these Twilight people show up in Breath of the Wild too. Wouldn't that be cool? If you want to support the channel, every dollar helps. We've got Patreon, so you can be in a video too. Thank you to all the wonderful sponsors. I appreciate every single one of you. Every day I walk into my studio and I
really hope Nintendo starts taking the route that the other game companies are doing, and like making remakes of older games, because I would love to see some of these old Zelda games get remade. Not like a remaster, but like a remake, you know? Twilight Princess being one of them.